If you want to win friends, make it a point to remember them. If you remember my name, you pay me a subtle compliment. You indicate that I have made an impression on you. Remember my name, and you add to my feeling of importance. Dale Carnegie. Welcome to Session 3. In the previous 2 sessions, we defined assertiveness as the foundation of all effective people skills. We first looked at strategies of assertive behavior, that is, how to plan and prepare for encounters in which you act assertively. Then we spoke about tactics of assertiveness that you can put into action when you're face-to-face with another person or a group. Now, and for the rest of the program, we'll focus on using assertiveness to attain specific results in your dealings with other people. Here in Session 3, for example, we'll see what it takes to create an emotional bond with another individual, a personal rapport that can not only make business dealings more fun, but can also be the basis for mutually beneficial interactions. Rapport is not necessarily a word we use every day, but we've chosen it carefully here because it refers to something very specific that happens between people. Here's how the dictionary defines rapport: an emotional bond or friendly relationship based on mutual liking and trust, and a sense that wants, needs, and concerns are mutually understood. At the outset, let me call your attention to 4 words in the definition you just heard. The words are mutual liking and trust. Words like that don't often enter into discussions of business success or negotiating strategies. Some of the rapport-building topics we'll discover in this session may seem obvious, but pay attention. You'd be surprised how many people set up interpersonal obstacles without even knowing it. When a new person comes into your life, whether by chance meeting or formal introduction, how do you decide what you're going to say and do? Actually, for many people, this isn't a decision at all. They just play it by ear. They present themselves to one person pretty much the way they've done with others. Their people skills in this respect are a matter of habit more than anything else. Changing that is the first step toward assertive rapport building. Assertiveness is the opposite of passivity, even if it's passivity in the face of your own established ways of doing things. So when you first meet someone, don't take anything for granted. Realize that new acquaintances may know nothing about you, and you should not assume that you know anything about them. It is of prime importance to understand that people have different upbringings, backgrounds, and value systems. With a new person, therefore, be very careful about voicing any strong personal opinions you might have, especially of a negative nature. Be positive in every respect. Show that you're glad to meet this exciting new individual, and most importantly, smile. The positive effect of having a smile on your face may seem obvious, but smiling is so crucial in building rapport that we should spend a moment focused on this. Literally from day one of a person's life, seeing a smiling human face elicits a huge positive reaction. This is something that's hardwired into our consciousness. It's universal. It's eternal. So just do it. It may surprise you to hear this, but as with other forms of assertive behavior, you should practice your smile. That's right. Stand in front of a mirror and see how you look. Pay attention to your eyes. Is the bottom half of your face smiling, while the top half looks like a deer caught in the headlights of a truck? As you'll see, an amazing thing about smiling is the effect it will have on you, as well as on anyone you meet. When the muscles of the face contract in a smile, the experience is reflected in the production of neurotransmitters in the brain. By looking happy, you can literally make yourself feel happy. There's just no way to overstate the importance of smiling as a rapport-building action. It's probably the single best thing you can do toward making people like you and want to be around you. And while you're smiling at your new acquaintance, why not try to say something complimentary in a genuinely good-natured way? There's an art to doing this, and once again, you'll get better with practice. It doesn't have to be anything personal. If you're meeting someone in a new city, you might say something about what a good time you've been having. If it's the other party who's come to your hometown, say something of a welcoming nature. If you're greeting a new employee to your firm, make a light-hearted remark about how glad you are to have them aboard. You'll find the right thing to say once you really commit to saying something or almost anything that's positive about the other person. As you're doing this, make sure that he or she can hear you. In other words, speak up. Speak clearly and articulate your words. With the possible exception of Marlon Brando, for most people, mumbling is a very ineffective form of communication. The truth is, I can almost assure you right now that in your business conversations, you speak too softly and with too little energy. There are many possible reasons for this. Maybe you don't want to come across as an overbearing personality. Maybe speaking in a quiet voice helps you to feel calm. Maybe you think this is a good way to prevent confrontations from developing. All those ideas make perfectly good sense, but are they real choices, or are they just habits you've fallen into? So be aware of this. Your normal voice intonation is probably too soft. That may not matter too much in most situations, but be aware of your tendency, and when you need to, be ready to assertively change it. As an assertive person, you should know how to vary your voice quality to build rapport in different situations. Pay attention to volume, pace, and inflection. Once again, these should be conscious choices, not just habitual behaviors. Pay attention also to what you're saying as well as to how you say it. Grammar and usage of the English language didn't lose its importance when you got out of school. The fact is, the way you talk will determine the way you are perceived. If you use slang expressions that went out of date 30 years ago, you'll be perceived as out of touch with contemporary trends. The ability to express yourself clearly and powerfully isn't just a way of dominating other people. It's a key tool for building rapport in an assertive way. As an extension of this, don't be afraid to stand up for your ideas, even if this causes some disagreement with others. Just be aware of the difference between argument and assertiveness. Differences of opinion are not a bad thing in themselves as long as they don't turn personal. The purpose of assertive disagreement is to find solutions to problems, solutions that both parties can agree on. That kind of win-win scenario builds much better rapport than simply giving in to another person's opinion or than forcing them to agree with yours. When you're called upon to give praise or criticism, it's a good idea to think carefully about what you're going to say and to make your comments as specific as possible. This makes your praise more genuine, and it prevents criticism from sounding like a general indictment of someone's character. For example, it's better to say, "You handled that customer very well by listening to her argument instead of interrupting," rather than saying, "You're quite good with difficult people." The second comment is so general that it doesn't provide specific feedback about what was done well. In the same way, "You missed the deadline for that report," is more effective than, "You're hopeless at managing your time." Again, the second statement is too general and subjective. Hopeless is not a good starting point for developing time management behavior, and it's certainly not a good word for building rapport. Always follow praise or criticism with a word about the reasoning behind your comments. People need to know where you're coming from if you expect them to be motivated to action. For example, after you say, "You missed the deadline for the report," you might want to add, "It's probably because you've been spending more time on telephone sales than we anticipated. Maybe we should discuss how you can allocate your time in the future." In any case, never use positive or negative comments as a way of manipulating people into doing something for you. Don't try something like this: "You're the most hard-working member of the department, and I really appreciate the effort you put in for the meeting this afternoon. Maybe you could just write up the minutes for me." Whether they let on or not, employees instantly see through that kind of tactic. It undercuts everything you've already said, and it makes whatever you might say in the future much more difficult to believe. As long as we're on the topic of how to build rapport through what you say about others, we should certainly look at the importance of what you say about yourself. Assertive people know how to speak well of themselves without seeming to brag, and there are many effective tactics for doing this. A great way to compliment yourself, for example, is by complimenting others first. If someone tells you he went to the University of Michigan and you say, "Wow, that's a great school," he's probably going to ask you where you went, And then you get to say Harvard or Slippery Rock or whatever the case may be. So a rapport-building objective has been achieved. You've made someone else feel good, and you've gotten to feel good in return. When you're speaking about your own accomplishments, discipline yourself to stick to the facts. Resist the temptation to embellish or dramatize everything you say. Instead of telling a long story about how you single-handedly slew the giant dragon, emphasize the hard work and effort that others put into achieving the goal. If in fact you are the one who closed the big deal, you'll be recognized for your accomplishment even if you give credit to others. The point is to avoid hogging all the glory. We all know that there are true geniuses in this world, and perhaps you're one of them. These are people who do things with ease that amaze most mortals. But there's also genius in knowing how to bring off these stunning accomplishments without having other people hold it against you, and no one will hold it against you unless you're tactless and undiplomatic about your achievements. Never make your success sound like it was just a walk in the park. You don't have to tell people it was the hardest thing in the world, but never make things sound too easy, or people will resent you for thinking you're better than everyone else. Make it sound like they could have accomplished the same thing as you. This will reassure them of their abilities, and they won't feel threatened by you. Internally, perhaps, they'll admit to themselves that they would not have been able to succeed as you did, but as long as only they know this fact, they'll be saving face. Remember, you may really be more capable than everyone else. In fact, you can even know that you're more capable. Just don't say so out loud, and your capabilities will help you build rapport instead of undermine it. We'll have much more to say about these issues later in the program when we focus on assertive communication. But since we've spent this much time on the subject of how to speak, we should also say something about the power of silence. Silence can be a great rapport-building tool. Just as what you say can help you develop rapport, what you don't say can also be of great benefit. Assertive people understand that. In fact, the higher you get in the working world, the fewer the words you really need to use. Without doubt, you've been around people who have difficulty keeping their mouths shut. In fact, you've probably been around at least a few people who literally can't stop talking. What causes this peculiar affliction? Really, it's nothing more than a fear of silence. It's a dread of what might happen if every single second isn't filled up with speech of some kind. There may also be an element of not wanting to seem antisocial or unfriendly. But remaining silent occasionally isn't the same as refusing to participate in a conversation, especially in a business setting. Silence doesn't equate with anger or impulsively clamming up. Appropriate silence, assertive silence, means purposefully choosing to be quiet, listening with full attention, and making the decision not to speak unless you know the positive purpose for doing so. Regarding the importance of silence, what you wear is one of the best ways of making a statement without words. Just as in other areas, there's a difference between looking too passive, looking too aggressive, and dressing with proper assertiveness. As a general principle, the intention behind what you wear should be to build rapport, not to fade into the background or to overwhelm everyone with your sense of style. Rapport building through your personal appearance means avoiding clothes that limit the way you'll be perceived, that tag you as one kind of personality to another. Your attire should be neutral in the best sense of the word. Don't dress to impress anyone, and certainly don't dress in a way that might alienate another person in a business setting. There's a very interesting concept that pertains to all the topics we've been talking about in this session: how you speak, how you dress, whether you smile or have a gloomy look on your face. This concept is something that psychologists refer to as a leak. In terms of human interaction, a leak is a behavior that reveals something about a person that the person has been trying to keep hidden. Stealing a glance at your watch, for instance, is a leak. You may have been trying to give the impression that you were listening closely to what another person was saying, but if you look at your watch and get caught at it, you've leaked the fact that you can't wait for the conversation to be over. In the same way, your attire can cause leaks if you don't give it conscious attention. This is especially true of accessories such as watches, jewelry, and shoes. On a larger scale, cars can also be a source of leaks. A car often represents a fantasy of how we want to see ourselves, but that may not really be the way that's best for others to see us. From a business point of view, the best car is new, moderately to expensively priced, and sensible rather than exciting. This may seem bland by your personal standards, but what we're striving for now is rapport building, not star power. The purpose is not to turn people on, but to avoid turning people off. Bear in mind, however, that an assertive person knows how to avoid turning people off without losing their respect. In fact, respect is an absolutely essential component of rapport building, and we'll have much more to say about it in a moment. Right now, think of a person in your working life with whom you feel a real sense of rapport. It can be a colleague or a supervisor or someone over whom you have management responsibility. There are many reasons why you may feel this way. There are lots of things you may like about that person. But in a business setting, it's very difficult to like people unless you also respect them. For this reason, respect is a fundamental element of rapport. A certain amount of conscious presentation is involved in cultivating people's respect, especially when you're in a management role. Right now, let's look at some of what's involved in this presentation. We're speaking here of cultivating respect. By that, we don't mean fear or subservience, but just the sense of esteem and high regard that absolutely needs to be present for rapport in a business environment. As with other aspects of assertiveness, respect as a rapport-building tool depends on knowing who you are and where you stand in an organization. There are no one-size-fits-all answers. For example, there are books that will tell you that you should never answer your own phone calls at work. But the rule here changes completely when we're talking about CEOs or the heads of companies. People at that level can actually gain respect by picking up their own calls or answering their own mail. The lesson is this: when you're already a person of respect, you don't need to act like a person who isn't. When it's obvious there are people who want to be around you and who feel rapport with you, you don't have to make an effort to prove that. On the other hand, when you're not yet very well known, you need to take a very different approach. A very fundamental principle of respect, rapport, and assertiveness is at work here. It's best expressed by a simple question: who says so besides you? If you want people to understand that you're an important and successful individual, ask yourself whether those people already know that, or do you have to get it across to them? Does your title as CEO of a Fortune 100 company tell the world that you're held in high esteem by the business community? Or do you need to reveal that fact on your own? The fact is, we're inclined to respect people when we know that other people respect them. We want to be part of an enterprise that other people already want to be part of. We're inclined to feel rapport with people when we know that other people are already inclined in that direction. To show that you're such a person, be assertive in implementing the following points. They're especially important when you're in the early or middle stages of your career. First, have a busy schedule. As a person of respect, you should rarely be idle. You have important things to do and influential people to see. You're so much in demand that you can't meet with everyone who wants to see you. Think of yourself as a popular restaurant or a well-reviewed movie. People line up to take part in experiences like that, and the lines only make more people want to get in. Furthermore, when they do get in, they're inclined to make the most of their good fortune. When a comedy film has already been certified as a hit, the audience starts laughing almost before the first line has been spoken. And the reason is very simple. It's the who says so besides you principle. They want to join the club. Second, show that you're a person of respect by placing yourself in important settings. Make an effort to attend a select number of high-profile events and functions. People who know how to build rapport naturally like to be around other people. They like to see and be seen. They like to network. They enjoy being in the loop. One thing is for sure, you won't build rapport if there's no one around to do it with. So assert yourself in the direction of socializing within your professional community. Third, make an effort to spend time in the company of successful and well-regarded people. Having this happen on a one-on-one basis is great, but it's even better to be seen in public with high-profile achievers. Who you know says a lot about who you are. When you learn to build rapport with successful individuals, you'll be amazed by the number of people who will want to build rapport with you. Next, think carefully about your workspace and how it looks. It's important to have a neat office, not just for appearance's sake, but because it will actually help you get more done. If you're in the early part of your career and you want to look like a social climber, hang your framed college diploma on the wall of your office, along with pictures of yourself shaking hands with famous people. In other words, displays like that are not a good way to build rapport. With respect to office furnishings and accessories, make less is more your guiding principle. In fact, with the introduction of new communications technologies, it could be argued that the importance of even having an office has radically diminished. Tom Peters, one of the most influential business writers of the past 50 years, advises managers to spend as little time as possible in their offices. As Peters makes clear, the way to build rapport is by walking around and talking with people. And if the truth were told, many people use their offices as places to hide, where they can look busy without really doing anything. So ask yourself what's the most assertive stance you can take with respect to your office. You may want to do more with your private workspace, or you may want to do away with it once and for all. The points we've covered so far have dealt with the physical attributes of your workplace personality: your clothes, your car, your office. These are important in building respect and rapport, but the attributes of your character are much more so. Here you should really learn to strike a balance between being bold and being prudent. In the business world, uncertainty is not a quality for people of respect. When you believe in yourself, others will too. By the same token, it's a mistake to take foolish risks or even talk about such a thing. Perhaps the best way to balance risk-taking against prudence is to keep your cool no matter what happens. Your achievements should appear natural, as if you didn't break a sweat to do them. And when things go wrong, don't sweat the small stuff should be your mantra. People want to be around someone who seems to have internal control, regardless of what might be happening in the external world. As you can see, there's a lot to know about how to build rapport. Some people have this talent naturally, while others learn it by trial and error, a process that can sometimes take many years. As an assertive person, of course, you don't have that much time to wait. So in the next session, we'll look at some exercises that can help build your rapport-building skills in the shortest possible time. Please join me there. Don't be afraid to give your best to what seemingly are small jobs. Every time you conquer one, it makes you that much stronger. If you do the little jobs well, the big ones tend to take care of themselves. Dale Carnegie. Welcome to Session 4. In this session, we'll continue our exploration of how to build rapport, with an emphasis on exercises you can practice on your own, as well as tactics you can try out with the people you meet every day in your work environment. As we begin this discussion, let's be upfront about one very important fact. Most non-assertive people are naturally rather shy. Some are moderately shy, and some are extremely shy. But if assertiveness is an issue in your life, the chances are you're not a naturally gregarious, life-of-the-party style person. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that you have to be conscious of your personal style. You have to balance your natural tendency with something else, something that may not be as natural, but that can be very beneficial to your life and career. Even if you're a very self-contained and solitary person, there are people in the world with whom you'll find it easy to build rapport, In fact, there are probably a lot of people like that, regardless of what you're like as an individual human being. The difficulty comes when you need to build rapport with people who are very unlike you, people whose interests are different, whose backgrounds are different, who think and talk and listen differently than you do. So in your working life, you can count on the fact that you'll meet a lot of these divergent personalities, and the higher up you get, the more of them there will be. In order to build a career that's both successful and enjoyable, you can and must learn how to build rapport with personalities that might otherwise have made you somewhat uncomfortable, not to mention those that would have driven you completely up the wall. For the next few minutes, we'll be looking at a number of the personality types you'll likely encounter, and we'll develop some tools and tactics to make sure that those encounters turn out in the best possible way. We're going to be looking at different categories of people, different personality types. Each of them presents specific issues with regard to rapport building. You'll certainly find some of them easier than others, depending on what your own personality is like. In fact, here are a couple of questions you should be asking yourself throughout our discussion. Which one of these categories most resembles me? What challenges do I bring to people who are trying to build rapport with me? Most importantly, while I'm trying to find easy ways to get along with other people, what can I do to make it easier to get along with me? The first personality type we'll discuss are the kind of people who are often described as hard drivers, peak performers, top achievers, or words to that effect. We'll just call them the alpha dogs. They see their business relationships as a hierarchy in which they are determined to reach the top. Even if they haven't reached that goal yet, they'll still do their best to be one rung above you on the corporate ladder. You might think the alpha dog is more likely to be male than female. Women do seem to be more collaborative and consensual by nature, but there are certainly exceptions. Regardless of gender, there are some people who see life as a zero-sum game. For me to gain, you have to lose. Every meeting, every phone call, every email, and every FedEx package is another opportunity for dominance and intimidation. It's not easy to build rapport with the alpha dog personality under any circumstances, and it's especially difficult when you're at the same level or below in the corporate hierarchy. So what needs to be done? First, realize that the alpha dog's behavior patterns are based on ego needs. Some of these people secretly believe that they're actually inferior to everyone around them, while others truly are convinced of their own superiority. It doesn't really matter, but the hard part of dealing with the big ego of an alpha dog is keeping your own ego needs out of the encounter. To see how this works, consider the following example. Randall is the owner of a company that supplies building supplies to customers around the world. It's not a glamorous business, but over the years it's been very successful. Randall is the kind of boss who keeps a very low profile. Rather than spending time at the country club or taking 2-hour lunches, he likes to immerse himself in the nuts and bolts of the business, which is quite literally nuts and bolts. One of Randall's vice presidents is a man named Ben, who's a very different kind of person from Randall. Ben likes the power and prestige that comes with holding a high rank at a successful company. He enjoys going to the restaurants, golf tournaments, and industry functions that Randall shuns. And Randall himself is quite comfortable with that. He knows that he likes to stay out of the limelight, but he also sees the value in someone like Ben, who brings the company's presence out into the world. But one day, something very surprising happened. A close personal friend of Randall's took him aside and revealed the fact that Ben was portraying himself as the CEO of the company. He didn't actually use those words, but in social settings he managed to convey the idea that he was the big boss. When Randall heard this, he thanked his friend for the information and said that he would speak to Ben about it. Although Randall was surprised that Ben would misrepresent his role in the company, the more he thought about it, the less surprised he actually felt. Ben, after all, was a person who needed to feel like he was the top dog. He couldn't really function unless he felt that way, And since he did do some valuable work, some space should probably be made for Ben's ego needs. Since those needs weren't going to go away, the only other alternative would have been to fire him. That same afternoon, Randall asked Ben to come to his office. After a bit of small talk, Randall disclosed the rumor his friend had told him. "I've just heard something really strange," Randall said. "I understand you've been telling people that you're the head of the company, that you actually have my job." As soon as the words were out of Randall's mouth, Ben began to stiffen up. He was caught, and he knew it. He was on the defensive, which was not a position in which he liked to find himself. Randall had to admit that there was a certain amount of satisfaction in seeing this alpha dog get put on a leash, but at the same time, Randall had decided not to make an ego investment in this confrontation. He wanted Ben to stop lying about his title, but he also wanted to keep Ben in the company for the company's own good. As Ben sat there squirming, Randall said something that took him completely by surprise. "I'm not really all that surprised by what you've been doing," Randall said, "because, after all, there's really a lot of truth in it. We both know that you actually do all the work here. I'm just a figurehead, right? You're the real brains of the operation." Ben looked at Randall in disbelief. He couldn't tell if Randall was sincere or whether he was laying a trap for him. As Ben tried to decide what to say, Randall continued, "The problem is, Ben, it creates a lot of confusion when you talk like this, even if there is truth in it. It also causes a certain amount of pain to me. So I'd like to ask you to knock it off for my sake and for the sake of the company. We both know how valuable you are around here, and that's what really matters. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?" Actually, Ben still wasn't sure that he did understand what Randall was saying, but it didn't really matter. On the one hand, he was extremely grateful that he wasn't getting fired. On the other hand, his ego was ready to believe that what Randall said was actually true. In any case, Ben decided then and there to keep quiet about who did what in the company. And to say he felt rapport with Randall would be putting it much too mildly. He felt tremendously grateful to him, and he also felt just a little bit fearful of him in a way that had never been true before. As a general rule, what the alpha dog wants more than anything else is recognition for his or her talents and contributions. Once again, this desire may be based on insecurity, or it may come from genuine egotism. You don't have to figure that out. You're a business person, not a psychoanalyst, so don't get in a power struggle with an alpha dog. Having said that, we also have to face the fact that sometimes alpha dogs leave you no choice other than banishing them, and you have to be able to do that, or they will eat you alive. From a historical point of view, one of the great alpha dogs of the 20th century was General George S. Patton. Early in the Second World War, Patton did a great job leading troops in North Africa and Sicily. He did such a great job, in fact, that he started to act more like a king than a general. By that time, plans were underway for the Normandy invasion in June of 1944. General Dwight Eisenhower realized that Patton couldn't be trusted to cooperate in a huge operation of that kind. So Eisenhower simply excluded Patton from taking part in the invasion. In an act that required a great deal of leadership and courage, he blatantly sidelined Patton, who felt angry and humiliated as a result. But Eisenhower understood both the strengths and weaknesses of the alpha dog personality. Once the invasion had taken place, he immediately began rebuilding rapport with Patton and quickly offered him command of a large body of troops on the continent. Patton was still angry, but he couldn't resist the bone that was being thrown to him. That's the way it always is with an alpha dog. You've got to make them feel important, or else you've got to really put them in the doghouse for a while. The opposite of the alpha dog is not what you might expect. It's not someone with low self-esteem who hides in a cubicle someplace. No, the alpha dog's opposite is a personality that we can call the secret agent. The secret agent has many of the same ego needs as the alpha dog, but is much less obvious about it. This is a type of person who wants to move up, but who wants to do it in a very secretive way. Secret agents are very politically astute within the corporate setting. They're very territorial. To win their confidence, you've got to make it very clear that you're not going to diminish them in any way. This is different from the alpha dog who wants outright praise and recognition. With the secret agent, you don't have to give them anything positive. But you do have to reassure them that you don't have anything negative in mind. And for secret agents, negative means anything that might encroach on their territory. A while ago, when we spoke about Ben, the alpha dog, we saw how difficulties arose from Ben's habit of talking too much, or if not talking too much, certainly saying the wrong things. A secret agent will rarely behave in that manner. The problem with secret agents is they won't talk enough. They won't tell you things you need to know. Their natural tendency is to withhold information so that the possession of it can maximize their own sense of self-importance. As a result, the goal of rapport building with secret agents is to draw them out, to create enough trust so that they emerge from their customary secretiveness. So the best approach to take with a secret agent is to ask as many questions as possible. But at the same time, you must make it clear that you have no hidden agenda for the information you hope to receive. You have no intention of using it to expand your own influence within the corporation, and you certainly have no desire to diminish the secret agent in any way. Secret agents rarely achieve the highest levels of leadership positions. Those positions usually go to the alpha dogs. But the truth is, secret agents don't really want to be the official leaders. They want to have their private fiefdoms in which they can exert absolute power without being in the glare of the spotlight. So don't feel you have to keep your own ambitions under wraps when you're talking with a secret agent. On the contrary, let the secret agent know that you're aiming for the top, and let the secret agent also know that you'll depend on him or her to be an important power behind the throne. Probably the ultimate secret agent personality of all time actually was a secret agent. This was J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI for 48 years under every president from Coolidge to Nixon. Each of those presidents had to develop rapport with Hoover. Each of them secretly wished Hoover would just disappear one day, but Hoover had done much too good a job of making himself invulnerable. So what's the solution? Constant praise, constant reassurance, and constant lip service to the great job Hoover was doing. As long as J. Edgar Hoover's needs as a secret agent were being met, he could provide a wealth of information that a chief executive could use, or sometimes misuse. In dealing with secret agents, the trick is just to see what they need and give it to them. Do that, and you can get what you need in return. So far, we've spoken about building rapport with what might be called difficult personalities. With the alpha dog and the secret agent, it's clear from the beginning that you have to make adjustments in your own personal style. To build rapport with these people, you have to understand their needs and learn how to meet them. There's another kind of person, however, let's call them eager beavers, who seem to be so likable, so compliant, so eager to please, that you need an entirely different set of people skills to deal with them. Usually an eager beaver is someone new to the corporation. They can't wait to absorb the company culture, to go out to lunch with everybody, to work hard and get ahead. If you've been with the company for a while, you'll find the eager beaver looking up to you with undisguised admiration. The question is, how are you going to respond to that? You might not take it very seriously, or you might be flattered, or you might try to take advantage of the eager beaver in some way. But from the viewpoint of rapport building, the best thing to do is to recognize the strengths of the eager beaver and also the weaknesses. These are people who do indeed have many strengths. They have a lot of energy, they're usually very intelligent, and they totally buy into the collective enterprise of a corporation. Here's the main thing you need to know about an eager beaver, not just for your own sake, but for your own best interests as well. The key fact is this: nobody, almost nobody, remains an eager beaver forever. If you handle them poorly, a high-energy eager beaver can quickly fall apart. They can go from being extremely helpful and efficient to being almost non-functional. They can change from being excited and naively confident to being hurt, depressed, and almost non-functioning. And it all depends on how well you understand them and how well you put that understanding to use. In the past few years, there have been several instances of journalists at major newspapers who got into trouble for fabricating or plagiarizing stories. One of the most flagrant of these stories involved a young reporter at the New York Times who seems to have been a classic eager beaver. Within the highly competitive culture of the newsroom, he presented himself as someone who was willing and able to work twice as hard as anyone else. He was the first one there every morning, and he was the last to leave at night. In fact, there were many nights when he never did leave. He was literally living at his workstation, typing out copy at his computer terminal. How did his supervisors respond to this eager beaver? Basically, they took his behavior at face value. He portrayed himself as somebody who was willing to do any job, no matter how much work was involved, and no matter how impossible the deadline seemed to be. So the senior editors simply shrugged their shoulders and gave him more work and more impossible deadlines. They figured, if that's what he wants, that's what we'll give him. He seems to be a young Superman. In hindsight, of course, those editors can probably see exactly what was happening. If the eager beaver was beating impossible deadlines again and again, one of two things had to be happening. Either the deadlines weren't really impossible, or something not quite kosher had to be happening. And the second of those two options is the one that proved to be true. The eager beaver was filing stories for the New York Times from all over the country, but he was never actually leaving New York City. In fact, sometimes he had never even left the New York Times building. His eagerness to please had turned into behavior that subverted the integrity of the whole company. What's more, he now felt that he himself was being exploited, even though he was the one who had begged to be given more work. All that enthusiasm had turned to anger. In his own mind, his unethical behavior was justified because he had been given an unrealistic workload. There's a lesson here for rapport building with eager beaver personalities. Since they're not able to put on the brakes by themselves, you have to help them do it. Above all, don't just assume that they know what they're doing, because that's definitely not the case. Don't let them burn themselves out, because if that happens, they can really do a lot of damage to themselves, and there's always the chance that they'll do some damage to you also. So rapport building with eager beavers is a matter of helping them pace themselves. They may feel badly at first. They may feel that you're trying to hold them back, that you want to keep them out of the limelight, that you're jealous of their talent and energy. But if you let them run, burnout is inevitable, and that's bad for everyone. In fact, the burned-out individual is another kind of person that's frequently present in a corporate environment. What's more, there are so many of them that you'll need a special set of people skills in order to build rapport. It may take some work to build that rapport, but it's usually worth doing, because very often these seemingly depressed individuals have some valuable knowledge and abilities. At the very least, they can give you insights on the corporate culture, which is especially important if you've just come on board. At best, they may be able to regain some energy and become real contributors. It all depends on whether you're able to rehabilitate someone who has more or less given up on himself. When you're dealing with this kind of person, someone who has lost enthusiasm and is just treading water, the key point is you must keep criticism to a minimum. In fact, this is a case when you should exclude criticism altogether from your rapport-building repertoire. Why? Why shouldn't you criticize somebody who is obviously making a half-hearted effort? Because criticism is what they're used to, what they've come to expect. They'll agree with you if you criticize them. They might not come out and say it, but on the inside, you're just saving them the trouble of beating up on themselves. That's their comfort zone, and they've got to get out of that zone before they can be of any help to anybody. So be supportive, express gratitude, pat them on the back, find a reason to say something good, and then keep saying it. The greatest gift you can give someone who's burned out in the corporate environment is the gift of hope. And you can always give that gift. Don't wait until they've done something good. Don't make that gift contingent on some goal or performance. Give it right now. This is something that many people don't understand about working with people. It's not a matter of saying, here's what I want you to do, and here's what you'll get if you do it. Instead, it's rewarding even the slightest positive action right now. And in that way, you move the person toward the behavior you want. You create motivation. You create momentum. You get them going under their own power. At this moment, if you're part of a corporate environment, I guarantee you that there are at least 3 or 4 people who fall into the category of employee burnout. If you think about it for a moment, I'm sure you could name them right now. Fundamentally, it doesn't matter what level they're at. It might be the person who answers the phones, or it might be someone at a much higher level, because the basic personality type is the same. They've given up hope. They're just going through the motions. They're washed up on the beach, and the tides are not going to come in. So think of a couple of these people who are in your workplace right now. I know they're there. It's just a matter of coming up with their names. Once you've done that, I want to end this session by asking you to try an experiment. It's an experiment in rapport building and in people skills, but it's also more than that. It's an experiment in being a good person yourself. I want you to find something to say to those 2 or 3 people that's encouraging and reinforcing and basically hopeful. I want you to look at what they're doing right now and find something good to say about it. And I want you to do that not just once, but several times. You don't have to give this reinforcement every hour or every day or even every week, but I want you to give it at least 3 times over a period of a month or so. And I want you to pay close attention to the results. If you do that, I don't need to tell you what the results will be. I know you'll find out for yourself soon enough, just as Dale Carnegie found out in the 1930s, when it wasn't just individuals who were depressed, but the whole country. Most importantly, you'll begin to realize what an enormously positive impact good people skills can have on anyone and everyone. That's more than just building rapport. That's building success in the truest sense of the word.